Hello and welcome to IMHO. And today I'm welcoming Duane Forrester back. He spent 20 years inside the industry from the early days of SEO right through helping to implement Bing Webmaster Tools and schema.org. And for the last year, he's been building something very quietly, which I can reveal at the end. But today he's talking about a problem most brands don't know they have. So, Duane, you have this phrase AI platforms are forming opinions about your brand right now. What does that actually mean in practice, and why should someone who's been doing this for years find that unsettling?
Well, first off, Shelley, thanks for having me on the show today. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and talk about this. I think it's not really news to anyone that AI platforms are looking at brands or taking in all the information. If you're not familiar with it, the AI platforms themselves operate their own crawlers, similar to how Googlebot goes out and crawls the internet and helps build the Google index. Every platform has its own crawler, sometimes multiple crawlers. If you use ChatGPT and you ask it a question, it will generally pull information out of its training knowledge, generally speaking, depends on the question. If there's recency or location attached to it, it will go and do a live pull. If you ask it specifically and tell it to go do a live web search, those are different crawlers that are operating in the background. And so, really, what's happening is all that information is coming back, it's being processed, being synthesized, and given back as the answer that we all know and love, right? You and I joked a little bit about this at the beginning, just before we started recording here, about, how every idea you have is awesome and everything is fantastic. And it's like talking to your mom. You can do no wrong, right? But the reality is that there is a mix happening here. And so every time a training system is updated, every time a training data set is updated or a new data set is added, information about the brand comes in to that knowledge that the platform possesses, and it influences how the platform sees you. And we'll get to this because there's a couple of different layers going on here. But if brands are taking the old way we used to approach SEO and trying to apply that directly to an LLM like Claude, for example, and say, if I produce content and that content talks about me and I go out into all these directories and I go and do all these interviews and I can do all these things, that all benefits me. That may be the case, but those LLMs are not just taking your word for it. They are also incorporating every instance where you are talked about or mentioned on the internet. So every time your competitor says something about you, every time a reviewer says something about you, all of that is being included. It's a very large landscape and surface area that an SEO has to manage today. We used to talk about this all the time, right? Like, before the LLMs came here, we used to kind of somewhat pat ourselves on the back and remind ourselves of like how much work there was to SEO, how complex it was, because there was a lot of work and it was complex. This is a whole other layer. This is a whole other thing. It's like looking back on your kitchen counter and realizing you only ever had the cake, you never had the icing. And now you've got the cake and the icing. Guarantee you there's more calories involved at this point. So seriously, when we talk about brands in and this how the opinions are being formed, these LLMs are trying to reach essentially a decision about you. Do I trust you? Can I show you? What does the receiver of my information take away from it? Those are the kinds of things that they're coming up with, not like traditional SEO, which was much more lexical in its approach, which is a keyword based scenario. Like, does this keyword match up with this topic slash keyword? Yes. Okay. Then I guess that's related. This is a whole other world. And businesses need to focus on that. The basic takeaway is do not approach AI and your desire, your need to be a part of that answer in the same way you approached being a part of the answer in Google. They're very mechanically different things.
Yeah, talking about the execution, you wrote an excellent article. I think it went live this week about the execution versus judgment layer. So you've been making that
Oh, yeah.
distinction between using AI execution layer versus judgment layer.
Yes.
And you're pretty blunt about how most practitioners are stuck at the execution level. There was
Yeah.
some really, really interesting stuff in this article that has really got me thinking. So I'd recommend everybody goes read it, which you can find on Duane's Substack or on SEJ. So what does moving up actually look like? And for anybody who hasn't read it, what is it? Is it realistic for asking teams right now? How can people get into the judgment layer out of the execution layer?
The way that I have come to think about this is if you're using these systems, you have to be an excellent product manager, program manager, project manager. Like you have to excel at those skills. You being a programmer is a lower needed skill for these platforms. If I say I want a sign up page created or I need to build the home page for my website, um, that's an easy thing for the system to actually come up with the code for. You don't have to have the depth of competency that you once needed. But I will promise you this. If you are a weak program manager or a weak project manager, this will fall apart very quickly. So this is where we're talking about the judgment layer. Okay. This is the knowing what you don't know. Oh, but Duane, how can I know what I don't know? I don't know it, therefore I can't know it. Sure, sure. You can sit in that circular argument all you want, but the fact that you are aware that you may not know something and then choose to take an action which explains the depth of your not knowing to you, that's the separation. And it goes from ask your question, take the output, go and do an action, which again still has a place. There are plenty of times you don't need to overthink something. But there are a lot of areas where I will get an answer back and I don't fully know what the actual answer means. Or there are words in there I'm unfamiliar with, there are phrases I'm unfamiliar with, maybe an acronym I don't know, or my audience may not know, or the acronym leads me down a different path of investigation because it refers to something. There's all of that. And that's the judgment layer. Knowing when to say, hold on a second, this is not the complete answer. I actually have to dig deeper. And the quest for speed strips that away in so many instances. People think, oh, if I just write a better prompt, I'll get the answer. And it's never that simple or straightforward. Because, like I said earlier, I'm pretty sure if you gave the same prompt to Shelley, myself, a dozen other people across the industry, we would expand that prompt to be much more inclusive in areas the original writer didn't think of. And it could be an oversight, it could be a lack of knowledge. I can't tell you where you lack knowledge. Only you can admit that. And then know, well, I don't know what I don't know. So I should probably ask what else is related to this topic that's important for my goal of X. And that's the judgment layer, is getting into it at
Mm,
that depth. It slows you down, markedly slows
yeah.
you down, but it produces better output faster overall. The way you get there is incrementally over time with small knowledge improvements. The track surface, the weather, other traffic that's on that racetrack, all of these different things that you have to account for. And unless you account for every single variable in the prompt, your prompt is not going to land you where you hope to land. Forget about a designation, right? Like getting like a certification or anything like that. What I mean by this is in your mind, you have to be able to hold the totality of a project and all of its pieces in
Mm,
some vision that you know where all the
mm,
nodes are. Okay.
mm,
I was trying to troubleshoot a problem for a customer. They didn't complete the credit card validation process. So, of course, the account is inactive. The problem that I'm facing is I can go one of two ways with this. And I'm talking it through with Claude and I'm saying, like, here's what I'm concerned with about, a scammer. Here's what I'm concerned with about a real client. Here is what I'm concerned with about the database and the changes I have to make and blah, blah, blah. And it comes back and it goes, you got option A and you got option B. And I recommend option B. And I'm like, funny enough, I agree with you. Option B. Great. How should I write a response to this person to get them to take the next in the real world step of validating their credit card. And it comes back with here's option one, here's option two. One of them completely talks in a different direction that is like not even related to what it is I'm trying to do. And then the other one is like, screw you, punk. No, here's the rules. Like, and I'm like, whoa, 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 what do you do? And we just decided in the conversation ahead of this that B was the option, and you don't address B in either of these. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I overlooked that. Blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
so it's really important to, as a PM, be able to hold all of this 60,000 foot
Interrogate
view,
everything it says. Yeah, yeah.
because your young intern that you pay 20 bucks a month, 100 bucks a month for is a genius idiot. That's who you're working with. And
Yeah.
like it will go and tell you, you should do this, you should do that. And then you'll have another part of the conversation. It'll come back and say, oh, you should also do B, C, and D. And you're like, whoa, 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 where was all that detail when I asked you about this the first time? And so, like again, dig into what is unknown, right? Don't be happy with, well, first off, if you approach it thinking you know everything, that's a failure point. If you approach it thinking this answer is finite and total, that's a failure point. So the judgment layer is you expressing your judgment about this
Mm.
based on experience. And if you lack experience, ask the system to bring you the cumulative answer of the shared experience of the world on this point. It will do that, and it will help you understand what other people's experiences have led to. Won't give you the experience, but it's a useful proxy.
Yeah, I mean, ask it to tell you what you don't know. It's great for that. It's great for like, walk me through this
Yeah.
like I'm an idiot and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I do that quite a lot. Give it to me in idiot speak, and so I
Yeah.
can really basically understand this. My friend calls it a toddler. She says it's training the
Yeah.
toddler.
Yeah. I
Totally out of
for
control. But
for years I have said it's like living and working with a genius 7-year-old.
yeah.
They have access to the world's knowledge, but they still want to please you as much as possible. That's that's where we're at still.
Well, moving on to the last question. You came up in an era when the rule was without data, you're guessing, and guessing is expensive. Does the industry currently have what it needs to make good decisions about AI visibility right now? And as you see, I think this is the question that everybody seems to be asking right now. And how long do you think that's going to be till we do?
Well, it's a two-part answer, and the answer is yes and no. So the vague answer around yes is yeah. There are tools and platforms out there that give you more information today about this situation than you had 2 years ago, or that ever existed because we weren't tracking this stuff. The other part of the yes answer is we have access to knowledge and data that didn't exist when the search engines started. The search engines didn't start with Webmaster Tools attached. That was something that came because the industry grew and we were making good guesses. We were unraveling the mystery. Like you really can't protect a patent against people who figure out your patent on their own and then start sharing that knowledge out loud. That's not a situation like you can't use your patent to go and litigate an individual who is smart enough to guess what you're doing. You can if it's a business, but not a group of individuals. And so, we on our own didn't want to guess. So we on our own came up with consensus answers. That was the beginning of the SEO industry. It was then also the beginning of SEO tools, where, a few among us sat down and said, hold on a second, there's enough information out here. I can build something that collates and gives you answers and trend analysis, and it gives us direction. It gives us intention without being absolute because we don't really have the inside knowledge. So we can only work with the external knowledge. And then came along, webmaster tools at Google and then at Bing. And, then we started things like schema.org, where that's wide open. And it's very clear if you use this, here is your benefit or non-benefit or proxy benefit, whatever you're getting. And I think that today, all of that accelerates much faster, right? Like what took us, I would say, 10 years to actualize the beginning of the SEO, industry, probably took us about 3 months to actualize with the beginning of this industry. There are a lot of things out there that will do the work for you instead of making you smarter about the work you do. And this is where the no comes in my answer. I was having a conversation with a friend. I'm not going to get big into it. I'm not going to name names, but this is his idea. I share it. There is a lack of self-education happening across the industry. I don't know if it's because people are busy and focused and they're still getting all the traffic from regular search, so their boss doesn't want to hear about AI, but their boss is telling them AI matters, so figure out a plan and everything's on a slow burn. And, as long as, our competition doesn't show up ahead of us, then we don't really care, but we want to outpace them at some point. I think there's a whole lot of it's all lost in the fluff right now in the middle. And and the data is there. You can actually see data that will help you make decisions, but you have to onboard a new platform. You have to learn what these things are telling you. There's new vocabulary, new language, there's new meanings to things like, sneak peek, you'll see it shortly, Shelley. This week's article that I'm working on is kind of tearing apart how people look at keyword research versus the semantic alignment that we see happening. And I'm like, these are two different processes. And the fear that I have and what I've heard from people when I talk to them is they are taking the idea of what traditional keyword research was and did, and they are blanket applying it to the new measurements that we have. And they are saying, oh, hang on a second. I was guessing before, now I have a number. All I have to do is optimize to that number. And they have no idea what's actually behind the number and what it means in the real world. So there's like a yes to this and a no to this, right? The data exists, the information is available, there are ways to access that, and they have a material impact on the work and the planning that you do. No, because it takes time for people to learn new things, to adopt new processes, to have their bosses okay $20 a month for this new thing. Because it's not about the $20. It's the company has a procurement process and we have a plan that we have to work through and we have a budget and we've already said what we're going to do. And those are very real world constraints that slow down adoption, that gets you that information, that grows that education, that makes the new foundation.
Yeah, well, I know we're starting to see, we're suddenly starting to see quite a rush of tools coming into the market, especially this year. And yeah, as we draw this to a close and wrap up now, I don't think it's any secret that this week you yourself, Duane, this is a bit of a clumsy segue, but Duane, you've just launched a tool, Citation IQ, about how you can see what brands are, what's visible about your brand in AI, if I believe that is correct.
Yeah, it's less of a tool, it's a data platform. This platform doesn't do the work for you. It gives you the information to make decisions about what's happening. And there is a lot. I looked at the database at one point, and I of course run a bunch of testing in the background. And in one account, in any one account, this happens with every account. The minimum number of data points that get created when you fully populate is like 9,000. This platform looks at that and says, here's the story that the LLMs are telling with your information. You can do competitive analysis. You can do what, look, we are seeing a new generation of services that are available to help people with all of this work that
Mm,
we're talking about, which reinforces my yes answer,
yeah.
but also reinforces my no answer. Because if you're an SEO and you come into a platform like mine, you won't understand some of the discussion that's happening. You will literally have to click on understand this data on the page to understand this data because you don't come preloaded with what you don't know. That's a recurring theme right now. And I suspect for the next several years, we're all going to be dealing with that. That's just a part of this changing landscape.
Mm. So, and for everybody, where can they find? Is it citationiq.com?
CitationIQ.com. Just go there, that's
Yep.
it. Or, look, you can track me down on the usual socials and my Substack is out there and all of that stuff, right? Like,
Yep.
I'm not hiding anything. That's the point.
Duane Forrester Decodes on Substack for anybody. We also run his articles on SEJ as well. And it
Yeah.
is, I've been reading it for, is it 18 months or 2 years?
Yeah. No,
It's
it's like
excellent.
18, 19 months now.
Yeah,
So
it's an
holy cow.
excellent, excellent column every week. And also his book, The Machine Layer, as well, I think has given me more of a base level understanding of how LLMs work than anything else. There's a lot of really incredible info, and I read a lot of content, and I rate Duane as being one of the top authors in the industry. The reason being is Duane is not only smart and understands his subject, he also has a very rare skill of being able to distill it and write about it in a very engaging manner. And believe me, there ain't many people who can do that very well. So yeah,
Oh,
Duane is one of my favorite star writers.
that's also because Dwayne's part idiot. So, like, I have to put it in language that I understand too, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that, Duane. I wouldn't say that.
Oh,
We could talk about this all night, but Duane, thank you so much. This is the second time
yes.
you've been on. I'm sure that you'll be on again soon. So everybody, go check out Citation AQ. Also, everybody, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and also check out my Shelley Edits Substack, where you can find all the article write-ups and transcripts of all these interviews. So, Duane, thank you very much for offering
Thank
your
you.
IMHO and hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Shelley.